just make sure.
Thank you all for coming out. And this will be repeated several times between now and the election on November 5th. And I'm delighted that we have Reverend York with us, as he did the last time. He is the moderator, and he lives over on Verona Island, so we're giving him a 30-minute head start so he can get across the bridge before anybody can get there. So it's now Mr. York's show. Thank you.
Okay, good evening to all of you who are candidates and to this fine crowd that's here tonight. I'm going to opt not to stand behind the pulpit because that's what I usually do. And I think you probably would be better served if I just sit here and moderate this tonight. My name is the Reverend Stephen York. I'm the minister of the historic Elm Street Congregational Church, which is the first church ever established in this town. And I'm here for my second year because I guess I did okay last year. Public service is really an important thing. And for all of you who have decided to offer yourselves for public service, we thank you, regardless of how this turns out. My wife and I live on Verona Island, so we don't have a vote, and it's my ethical policy not to endorse candidates or recommend candidates within the church. So I'm neutral. I'm about as neutral as you can get without, and still have a personal opinion. But so how this will work tonight, we have 1 2-year term, and there are 3 who are running for it. Those 3 are Mr. Morrison, Mr. Carmichael, and Mr. Devanzo.
Correct, close enough.
Thank you. If I mispronounce your name, please just be gentle, and I'll try to fix it. And then we have 6 who are running for 2 3-year terms. So how the questioning is going to work tonight is that the 2-year candidates are going to answer first in a 1 2 3 pre-picked order, and then the same question will be asked of the candidates in the order that you've chosen tonight. You'll be asked the same question, but the last 6 will be always someone who's running for a 3-year term. Is that clear? So we'll do the first 3 will always be for the 2-year seat. The last 6 will always be for the 3-year seat. Okay. This program will go up to 2 hours, maybe not that long, but we'll see. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes for an opening statement, up to 3 minutes. The same question will be asked of all candidates. And I'm ruling out any question that's been put to me in writing directed toward one candidate. So if you don't hear your question because it was designated for one candidate, I'm ruling that is not, all questions must be answerable by each candidate. So we're not having any ad hominem questions tonight. Your responses, candidates, will be up to 1 minute. You will be given a 2-minute closing statement opportunity, and I think that that's pretty much where we are. I have a trustworthy timekeeper next to me. And so there are many questions that are important in the life of Bucksport. And so I'm going to wait sort of toward the end to ask you, why do you want to run and why do you think you're qualified? I know we normally start with that stuff. I want to get to more of the meat and potato questions tonight. And so I'm opting to go in that direction. And then toward the end, we'll make sure you get a little time to answer that. Why do you want to serve and what do you think you can get done? But we're going to begin with this question. And it will go first to the two-year candidates. The question is to Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, do you support the proposed town-backed TIF, which is tax increment financing incentive for the whole ocean salmon plant?
As far as I can understand the TIF, oh, by the way, thank you all for coming here tonight. Very good of you. I think that the TIF is something that I don't know anything any further than just what's been explained to me, and according to what the officials that do know what they're talking about are telling me that it's a good program and that we should stick by it.
So the moderator takes that as a yes, you're in support of it, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. The same question is going to you, Mr. Carmichael. Do you support the proposed town-backed TIF financing incentive for whole ocean salmon plant?
I do. I think, on the face of it, it's a little bit confusing, and it takes some time to really dig into and understand, but, there's a long precedent involved with that, and if you go back to the beginning of the establishment of the mill, when the mill was first coming in, our town government offered a TIF to create the incentive for the mill to move here, to put jobs here, and maybe not as expansive as that, but still the incentive, I think, is important for a new operation to get up and running and to create the necessary economic viability to keep going over many, many years, we hope, in the town of Bucksport, so I do support that.
All right, Mr. Devanzo, same question. Do you support the proposed town-backed TIF financing incentive for the whole ocean salmon plant?
I think it's a necessity. I don't like it, but I think it's a necessity if you're going to have the plant come in to the town of Bucksport. What I don't quite understand, since I'm not privy to all the information, all the town council members meeting on their own and discussing it, there was a give back toward the Verso. The taxes were lowered for Verso, and the taxes here again are being put aside. It seems to be that there's an awful lot of pressure being put on the elderly, and the elderly, if they're going to raise taxes, to cover up the lack of taxes gotten from that site. And you're asking a lot from certain people who have worked their whole life and are now living their future now. So yes, not for it, but it may be a necessity.
Thank you. We're now going to three-year candidates with the same question. I'm going to ask the timekeeper, because these are 1-minute responses, when we get to 15 seconds, if you'll just speak it out, because I'm having a little trouble hearing it from you. All right, the order for the three-year candidates, it will be the same question. The first person is Mr. Rankin. Mr. Rankin, do you support the proposed town-backed TIF financing incentives for the whole ocean salmon plant?
Yes, I do. There's a lot on the TIF that I don't fully understand, but I think we need to work with Whole Oceans wholeheartedly as much as we can. They got big shoes to fill, and they can't do it by themselves, of course, but it's definitely a bonus for Bucksport.
Thank you. The next question in order, Mr. Palaskis?
Yes.
Did I do okay?
Yep, perfect.
Good. It's the town-backed financing for Whole Oceans, the TIF.
Yes. Yes, I do support it. I believe that the overall, the idea is that if you develop a piece of land and make it valuable, even at a discounted rate, it's still better than an undeveloped piece of land sitting there collecting full taxes.
Thank you. The next candidate that will speak to this is Mr. Robs. Mr. Robs, is it Robs or Rabs? I'm sorry.
Rabs.
Rabs, I apologize. Mr. Rabs, do you support the town-backed TIF financing for Whole Oceans?
Yes, I do. It's a tax incentive for Whole Oceans, but it's also a tax shelter for the town, and that's not a bad thing. The way I understand it is, it will lessen it will not lessen the amount of money that the state provides into the school. It will have an impact, but it will not lessen it in a large amount. And also, it will not increase the county tax in a large way. The town of Bucksport learned a couple years ago on a business-friendly basis, not being flipped at how to play the game, and I think we're running ahead of that compared to other municipalities. And I also think that with Whole Oceans, that a pilot plant might be pilot, meaning payment in lieu of taxes, where they come up with some sort of a payment to cover the police, fire services, and other things like that in town.
Thank you, that's time. The same question is now going to Ms. Downs, Kathy Downs, and do you support the proposed town back to financing of Whole Oceans?
Yes, I do. I have been a member of the town as a town clerk for almost 27 years, so I've been at about every town council meeting there is. So what Robbie has said, I can't really add any more to it because that's how I understand it also.
Okay. I want to check with the audience. Can everyone hear?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that we move the microphones closer, please. And I'll give just a quick response again, because I'm not sure everyone heard your answer.
I agree with what Mr. Carmichael said. I have been the town clerk for almost 27 years. I've been at every town council meeting, maybe 2 I've missed in that amount of time. And I do understand the TIF program, and it is a benefit, I believe, for not just the town, but for Ocean. And I think it will bring in jobs. And over a time, it's going to be nothing but a plus for not just the community, but for the employer himself.
To the audience, if anyone cannot hear at any time, just simply put your hand up and I'll hopefully notice it, and I'll ask people to, yeah.
Just a comment, I believe the microphones are only for the purpose of recording the video and audio, isn't that correct? So everybody needs to speak up, the microphones are not enhancing their audio.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just bear that in mind, everyone, okay? Thank you for repeating your answer, Kathy. And again, raise your hand if you can't hear. Number 5, number 5, Nancy Minot, would you please respond to the question, do you support the town back TIF financing incentives for Whole Oceans?
At this time, I would not give a definitive yes or no to whether I would support that. Were I a counselor at this moment and had been a part of making this decision, I would have had more questions that I would like answered. I'm quite certain that it is good for Whole Oceans. I don't think as a community we have been given the answers in a really clear way as to how does that help build strong community here in Bucksport. So I think more information would be needed.
I'm not sure if that's a yes or a no.
That's like in between.
I know, but I'm a voter. I only get to pick 3 of you.
At this moment, I'm a citizen, so I do not have the information that I would have as a town council person
Right.
to make a definitive yes or no.
Okay, so you're saying you would want to wait until you got more information.
Right.
Okay, but you're not ruling it in or out.
That's correct. I've heard from people in Bucksport that favor that TIF and that really concur with a lot of the opinions here, but I have heard an equal number of people who have questions about that. So,
Yep.
concerns.
Thanks, I'm not trying to press you,
No,
but
no,
I
I
just,
do.
you know, I'm thinking of what the voters might wonder. Okay, Rachel, would you take the question, please? Do you support the proposed incentives for Whole Oceans?
As well, we don't know the whole argument or everything laid out, so I can't make an accurate decision. I think that it's a good structure-based foundation. I think a lot of questions, like others have said, needs to be answered. But then again, the town council, it's a group of people making decisions based on what the people want and what's in the best interest of the people. And without that information and, the people, I can't actually make that decision.
Okay, thank you. I'm noticing, as I'm going along here, that Mr. Houghton asked me to give everyone a 3-minute opening statement, and I realized that once I got into the first question, I didn't do that, but I'm going to correct that now. So you will have 3 minutes for your opening statement, and there will be the 3 two-year candidates first. We'll begin with Mr. Morrison, and the pink paper will go up when you have how much time left?
30.
30 seconds left. Mr. Morrison.
Good evening. Thank you for attending this event. I'm Jim Morrison. Many of you know me personally, but there are those among you that only know me as a person sitting in the back row at the council meetings. Again, there are those here in attendance that probably have no idea who I am. I have been a resident of Bucksport as long as I've been alive, with a few exceptions when I embarked on adventures to various other locations, only to return each time to my roots. My 3 children were raised here and have gone on to be successes in their various career choices. I live now with my beautiful wife in Hueytown out in East Bucksport, on the farm that my grandfather acquired in the mid-40s. It's important to note that my approach to the podium in the council chambers in many cases is referred to as negative. To clarify, I have an opposing view to many decisions and have no fear of standing up to air my view. The use of the word negativity is a manipulative term used to sway your opinion of me. I will say this to that use of the term. I will only look at things from the standpoint of those that I represent. As I said, I have attended council meetings for around 5 years, missing only 2 meetings in that time. A better attendance record than any member of the now seated council. I feel as if to be there to represent not only the people that elected you, but those that did not vote for you. All citizens of the town need to be represented. The decisions that are made by a councilor should, without exception, be made with the citizens of Bucksport in mind. I will represent the people, not the town government. In the brief time that I was a member of the council, a mere 15 minutes to anybody that didn't know it, it's probably closer to 10, but I swear it was 15. Learned that I am not exempt from the rules set forth to govern the town and the town's government. In fact, it should apply to all citizens. The issues facing us as citizens will be resolved by the council that will be elected in November. Choose the best people for the job, stay informed, and keep your representatives informed. Don't let your town government dictate to you, dictate to your government. In conclusion, I would like to ask for your vote and to give me the opportunity to serve you as your voice in the council. Thank you again for attending tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. We move quickly on to Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, and thank you to Don and the Enterprise and Reverend York and everybody else that played a role in putting this together tonight. I grew up in Bucksport. My family's been here since I think my dad got here to coach football in 1961 or 62. I raised my kids here. 3 of the 4 graduated from Bucksport High School, and I'm very proud to be a Golden Buck, and will carry that with me wherever I go. I've had 2 different careers that I think brings a little bit of perspective to the role, and I think it's important with any position you have, whether it's a committee, a council, a member of any group. It's important, I think, to have a perspective from a variety of different things. I spent 27 years in the military. In my last 16 years, I've been in the banking business. I've been on statewide committees and councils, as well as the school board in Bucksport, and now been a member of the town council. I'm running again. I had decided at one point that my 3-year term was, when I was up, I was going to start looking at at retirement and where I was gonna go and what I was gonna do. And as I talked to people around town, people that have been really energized and passionate about what's going on in Bucksport, and urged me to reconsider and think about maybe staying on and being part of this. And as I reflected on where I am and the fact that I'm not really ready to retire yet, I can't retire yet, so why not continue on and try to contribute something to the great, another part of the great business that's going on in Bucksport right now. Because we have incredible passion. I've been a member of a couple fine groups and assisted in others. Groups like Bucksport Next, Heart and Soul, Main Street, Wednesdays on Main, Bucksport Bay Healthy Communities, all sorts of wonderful people contributing to Bucksport. And I too feel I represent the entire populace of Bucksport. And when I sit and listen, and I think I provide a perspective and a reasonable, thoughtful approach to going about business as a council member, and take into consideration the perspectives that I hear, whether they're information coming from Heart and Soul, the interviews that way, or just talking to people on the street. I think a reasonable approach is what I bring to the council, and I hope to continue on for the next 2 years in this capacity, and I ask for your vote moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Mr. Devanzo.
Hi, and thank you for coming, and thank you very much for inviting me here. My name is Joseph Devanzo. I live in the town site with my wife, Bess, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York, not Brooklyn, Maine. So many people tell me I am from away, but that's it. I had my first place was 1974 in Ellsworth. From there, we moved to Calais on Swan Street with my second house, and from there, I live now in the town site in Bucksport. My life has been a life of volunteering for different organizations. And one thing with volunteering is you learn that your greatest aspect, that the greatest thing that you can give to anybody is listening to another person. Listening to what they want, what they expect, what their needs are, what their fears are, what their concerns are. I was fortunate enough to have a background. I went to St. John's University. I did obtain two degrees. From there, I was a tutor for underprivileged children for 4 years. From there, I was hired by the Queensborough Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I was a counselor to 15 10-year-old children who lived in a shelter. From there, I was hired by the United States Postal Service, and I was elected by the membership to be the union delegate for Branch 562 of the National Association of Letter Carriers, and I served for 25 years. When I left the Postal Service, I went to work for Catholic Charities for 7 years to work in their program for the elderly. From there, I was strictly in Maine, and what I am here is my second term as assistant or alternate town assessor for the town of Bucksport. I am secretary for Chapter 485 of the National Association of Active and Retired Federal Employees of Maine. We meet up in Brewer. I am I'm the deputy grand knight for the Knights of Columbus, and we do the fish fry. If you've been there, then you have seen me and met me. And yeah, I know it's a great fish fry, but if you know, most of that effort goes back to the people in town who have needs. They don't accept the congratulations, but they give it out. I'm a Master Gardener. I did attend the University of Maine. I attained my Master Gardener's degree, and I volunteer at the Senior Center in Ellsworth at the Moore Center, and boy, it's fast, and at the Emmaus shelter there. I'm a Red Cross volunteer, a U.S. Sail and Power Squadron in the Penobscot Bay. I teach their courses there. I do plenty of volunteering in town with the going back to Bacchus and at the Bayfest, Heart and Soul. I've read to the children this summer twice, and I did the apple cider this Saturday, and today I was at the Maine Senior. That's it. Thank you. I'll continue later. I wanted you to get to know me anyway.
Thank you. We now move to candidates for the 3-year term. The first is Mr. Rankin.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I apologize, I'm fighting off a cold for the past few days. My name's Edward Rankin Jr., 42 years old. I live right on Route 46. I'm married to my amazing wife, Jennifer. Between the two of us, we have 5 children. My daughter, Hope, who's a junior in high school. My stepdaughter, Haley, who's a junior in high school. My son, Lars, who's a freshman. My stepdaughter, Isabella, who's in 8th grade. And my daughter, Alicia, who's in 5th grade, which explains why I have a cold. I didn't find it out. I operate a garage in Bucksport called Ed's Automotive with my father. I graduated from BHS in '95. Went to the University of Maine for a year and a half for law enforcement criminal psychology. Then decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, so I moved to Florida. Got hired on the private yacht industry, became first mate, got sent to Germany, and then from there I traveled all over the world. Eventually I found my way back to Bucksport. Kind of always knew I would, but it took 7 or 8 years before I migrated back. I want to get into town politics so my kids can someday maybe have an opportunity to love and live it like I grew up knowing. Times have changed, but there's still great potential here for them to be able to make a home here and earn a living here. And that's it.
Thank you. We move on now to Matthew.
Yes, sure. Hi, my name is Matthew Palaskis, a Bucksport High School graduate. I'm not originally from here. I was born in Jersey. Sorry. But I've lived here most of my life, off and on. Had a tendency to leave for various reasons and always come back. I spent 6 years in the Air Force in networking, as a network engineer, which is what I've continued to do ever since. I was stationed in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 6 years, where I met my wife, Renee, and we had 2 kids. And it was kind of decided that military was great, but raising kids was more important. And I really couldn't think of a better place than to come back to Bucksport. Winters and all. So we've been here since 2005, and moved away for some work for a little while. Came back in 2011, 2012. Been working in military, manufacturing, education, banking, kind of covered it all, but I've always been in technology. I think for the most part, the reason why I think that this is a worthwhile cause is because Bucksport is a worthwhile cause. I've always believed that it was a pretty special town, sort of an underdog. Because it's a beautiful coastal town, but no one thinks of it in the same way they think of all these other coastal towns. Everyone thinks, oh, it's just a mill town, but it's a lot more than that. And I honestly don't believe that there's something we need to fix about Bucksport. I believe it's already a good town. I think for the most part, my hope in this is that we can kind of keep it moving along in the same positive direction. Keep the businesses that we have, add more as we can, but I believe in, common sense decision-making when it comes to the town council. We've got to be able to come together and make a decision based upon what's going to be in the best interest of the people who live here, the businesses that are here, the ones that might want to come here, and hopefully, our kids, we have two boys, and other people's kids will feel like this is a worthwhile place to stay in, or at very least go out, find their direction in life, and then come back here to start their families.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs,
Yes, my turn.
your opening.
Thank you. First, thank you to the Bucksport Enterprise and the RSU, and all of you in the audience and those both here and at home. for this evening's candidate forum. My name is Paul Rabs, and I am running for the 3-year town council seat. With my wife Leslie and I, we're now closing in on our 8th year here. Bucksport has been an inspiration to the both of us. We came here for a visit for a week, and at the end of that same week, we ended up buying our forever home here. It's the people here, the way the town is run, the services, the volunteer organizations. It's just been an inspiration to us. When people ask us what we like about the town, we have a one-word answer, both of us. It's everything. In preparation for another 3-year term on council, I've once again attended numerous council meetings to better understand this council's workings, the efforts of town committees, and the current fiscal and budgeting planning process that's going on. A quick by way of background for me, after 4 decades, I'm retired from the private sector. My last 20 years were in sales management, in various industry segments, I've led sales teams in major business pursuits and capital projects. In terms of community service, I served on the Bucksport Town Council. The first 3-year term was 2016 to 2018. I pulled my papers last year to run, but there was a hiccup, so I withdrew my paperwork. With Maine Municipal Association down in Augusta, I was the backup voting representative for the area behind our town manager, Sue Lessard. Then in 2017, I became the voting member at that organization. I'm currently on the Bucksport Fire Department. I'm a paid on-call firefighter, and I also have 20 years in the fire service under my belt. I've just completed last 7 years at Maine Maritime Academy, finishing up with shipboard firefighter and training over there. I started out as a trainer and moved up to be fire ground safety officer. Every spring I worked with the 200 plus cadets, and then on to the Global Mariners. A lot of the stuff that's now going to be coming to Bucksport with Maine Maritime. Prior to moving up here, I was a member of FEMA out of a Washington, D.C. based response team for 1 year. And also, prior to moving up here, I was on town committee developing their capital improvement plan.
Thank you. That's time. All right. We're moving on now to Kathy Downs.
Again, I would like to thank Dawn, the Enterprise, and Reverend York, and the RSU 25 for holding it here, and everybody for coming. My name is Kathy Downs. I was born in Castile, Maine, and I've lived in Bucksport practically my entire life. I graduated from Bucksport High School. I had 2 daughters that graduated from Bucksport High School. I was working in the banking industry for 15 years when a previous town manager approached me and asked me to come to work for the town. And here I am. I was attending Thomas College to get my business degree in banking, and that kind of stopped when I came to the town. I have many family that was involved in the town. I had a grandfather that was a volunteer firefighter. My father was a volunteer firefighter, an EMT, and then he came on board full-time and became captain, and he was on board for 48 years. And I had an uncle that was a fire chief, so I've been involved in the community for a long, long time. And not to mention myself as town clerk for almost 27 years. I did have an extremely hard time retiring. I retired in April. And because I had an extremely hard time, I thought, why not run for town council and continue to be involved in the town that I love? And this is a community that is moving forward. It's very exciting what's happening. I'm a hard worker, and I want to continue helping the citizens in the community. and help move the town forward in a positive direction. From being town clerk, I'm very familiar with the town codes and ordinances, and I think that I would be a key in helping. I will work to keep all the citizens in the town abreast of what's happening, and will always be available to anybody to help in any way I can. So I would very much appreciate your vote on the 5th of November, and I will work very, very hard for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving along now to Nancy.
Thank you to Dawn of the Enterprise for organizing this candidates forum. Thanks to Stephen York for moderating this forum, and thanks to all of you for coming out and participating. People have asked what issues I am running on, and I reply, the issues of the town council today that they are facing will be different in the months ahead. I will consider each new issue, study it, elicit citizen input, and arrive at my position, one based on a simple question: does it further the building of a strong community? I'm running because I want to be a voice for strong community. What do I mean by strong community? I moved to Bath, Maine, a shipbuilding town on the Kennebec River, the summer before I entered 9th grade. I had a boyfriend who sold the daily newspaper, the Times Record, at the entrance to the ironworks each day as the workers streamed out when the whistle blew. Everyone bought the community paper, and Teddy handed out the papers and I took the coins. I can't remember if it was a dime or a quarter. I remember horseback riding with a new friend after school, and I can still remember the trails we rode through fields and woods, and my sense of being in the right place, belonging there. People in Bath knew one another. We helped each other when needs arose. I remember an ice storm when the whole town lost electricity for a week. Having only oil heat in our house, the 7 of us in my family camped around wood stoves in the homes of friends. And sure, the townspeople had their disagreements. There was a north end and a south end that struggled with the challenge of growing together as one community. But most of the community cheered loudly, in unison, at the Morse High School football and basketball games. It was a strong community, a group of people who shared much in common and the strength of the connections among them. I left Bath to attend the University of Maine in Orono and settled in Bangor for the following 35 years, raising my 2 daughters. Faced with a big house after my daughters went off to college and the death of my partner, I thought, where should my next home be? I was teaching at Orrington at the Center Drive School, and then I saw an ad for an apartment on the banks of the Penobscot River, a small mill town, and within commuting distance. I had lived by a river and in a small mill town and skated on ponds and snowmobiled through fields and woods and had thrived during those years. So I did not hesitate to pack up my belongings and move to Bucksport. It was like coming home. Shortly after arriving at Bucksport, I became involved in a project called Heart and Soul. I had the privilege of meeting so many Bucksport residents, listening to their stories of bygone past days, getting a glimpse into what mattered to them in their community. Enthusiasm and energy were evident in their voices as they shared their hopes and dreams. A strong community.
Thank you. Rachel, your opening statement, please.
Okay, hi. Thank you for everybody that made this happen, and thank you for everybody that came today. I wanted to be a part of the town council to obviously have more women and also have more diversity to break down the disconnect. You know, the council does a lot for the town. A lot of times, you know, the people's voice is different than what happens in the town, so I wanted to be able to kind of, you know, if you talk to anybody, they know they're going to tell you what they want and what they don't like and this and that. So I just thought maybe I could, you know, somehow help that, you know, not saying that Bucksport, you know, it has done a lot, you know, but I think that that would bring more to the, you know, bringing everybody together so that they do have their voice, because that's what the town council is. It's us working for the people, doing everything in their power to make, you know, Bucksport an even better place. So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I met my husband in the Air Force. He was a smart man because he brought me up here in June when there was no snow. And then the snow came. Even though I really don't like the winters, I do like Bucksport, and it is our home now. Our two boys have, you know, grown up here and gone to school. Our dogs, you know, we walk the trails, we run into people. You can run into anybody in Bucksport and have a conversation, you know, anytime, whether it's Miles Lane, the Silver Lake, the waterfront, anywhere. There's always something going on in Bucksport. When I first got here, everything closed so early, and I was just like, oh my God, where did you move us to? And now there's so much going on, and you're just like, what am I gonna do? You know, and I just want that to continue, you know, and with the whole Oceans and other businesses, but I want it to be like, whether it's a big corporation or a small business, everybody is welcomed, you know, and everybody is taken care of. Whether it's, you know, the school, you know, every kid having food to eat, or the senior citizens being taken care of. That's all. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, we'll remind the candidates and the audience that we're now moving to a round of questions, which are going to allow each candidate 1 minute. You will be given a 15-second warning by our timekeeper that your time is about up. There are several very important questions here tonight, both from the audience and some that were sent in before the meeting tonight. And I want to get through as many as possible, and I'm using some discretion on what I think are some of the hot topics that I'm aware of. So we'll begin again the same manner. We will go through the 3 two-year candidates and then the 6 3-year candidates. Beginning, the question is this. Let me start again. What is your position on the $3 million 10-year bond issue, which will be on the ballot to improve the town's roads over the next 3 years? Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. There is no question that the roads need to be worked on. I think $3 million is not going to touch 50 miles of roads. All it's going to do is put a Band-Aid on something that needs to have some kind of leak-proof on it. Roads need to be redone and redone correctly, or all we're going to do is throw $3 million down the drain, and 5 years down the road, we're going to be looking for another $5 million. So I'm thinking that if we want to have the roads done right, we either just set up an amount per year, do one section of road, do what little bit we do as far as putting resurfacing on the roads, and continue that throughout the next 10 years and try not to go into debt for it and end up throwing good money after that.
Let me repeat the question because I'm not sure what your answer is. Do you support the $3 million bond, which is on the ballot, with a yes or a no, to improve the town's roads over the next 3 years?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Carmichael. Same question to you, sir.
The answer is yes, I do support the bond. I think it's no surprise to anybody, and frankly, after this year's winter, around the state, our roads were in just horrible shape because of the winter we had. But ours have fallen into disrepair and we're way behind, and particularly the roads out back. I think those of you that live out there know we have some serious work to do, and this is going to just be the beginning, but we've got to also create a long-range plan, and we've talked about that at the council, creating a systematic approach to dealing with our roads so that we can hopefully catch up and sustain our effort as we go forward and not find ourselves climbing out of it the way we have to right now.
So, Mr. Carmichael, you are a yes on the ballot bond issue. Thank you. Moving on now to Mr. Davanzo, your position, sir.
Yes, I don't think we have really a choice. I managed to get in my car and drive around many of the back roads, and No work has been done on a lot of roads on the shoulders of these roads, and the edges of the roads have collapsed and fallen in, large gaps in the middle of the road. If we don't at least attempt a portion of the roads, the $3 million may not cover all the roads, but it's got to be addressed, because in 2 years, once the water gets in, freezes, and they open up more, it's going to be even worse. So yes, am I in favor of, you may not like it, but a $3 million bond over 10 years is $300,000 a year. The interest on the bond is going to be paid off by the money that we have stored in the bank.
You have
So
15
yes, I am
seconds.
for it, because you really don't have a choice. You need the roads for the people to get around.
So the audience, are you clear? Mr. Morrison is a no on the bond issue. Mr. Carmichael and Mr. Devanzo are yeses on the bond issue for the roads. I now move to the 6 candidate 3-year term office seekers. The question again to you, what is your position? I'll begin with Mr. Rankin.
I am not in favor of it. That's a no. It's, we definitely need to repair the roads. They've been going on the wayside for years. But I was looking at the 2018 budget, and it was roughly, I think, $180,000 and change spent on pavement, and zero for capital investment on pavement. I think, what happened in the past doesn't matter now, but we definitely need to get way more aggressive every year and fix what we can and keep going from there, rather than paying interest to a bank. I just think we need to be a lot more aggressive year by year and take care of the problem.
Mr. Rankin is a no on the bond issue.
Yep.
Moving on to Matthew.
I would be a no on that as well. I believe that ultimately the correct decision is to try to tackle the roads appropriately the first time, rather than just continuously patching. We do pay pretty substantial excise tax in this state. I think we need to make sure that we're using our money effectively to continuously improve upon and maintain roads, rather than waiting until they get to a point of disrepair that we can't climb out of. But I think that managing our money, our taxes correctly is a better option than paying out interest.
Thank you. Mr. Palauskas is a no.
Correct.
Moving to Mr. Rabs.
Okay, at this point, I am neither for or against the road bond. I spoke with the town manager today, and I also went and stopped by Town Hall and read the sample ballot. And it turns out that this is going to be a binding vote that's going to be taking place on both the road bond and the pool. The question I have, and what's driving me to my response on the road bond, is I don't understand the basis for the $3 million road bond. Several council meetings ago, the department head for the DPW reported that the road paving was, quote, "we're a little behind," end quote. What I don't understand is what happened between now and then. Where is the plan, and has there been some sort of a catastrophic vote that's taken place? Commercially, this is a 3-year repair effort with a 10-year bond. The interest will be paid by establishing from the interest out of the existing accounts. The principal, that breaks down, as Joe here said, about $300,000 over the next 10 years. Every mill that we collect in the town is worth about $400,000. So my question is, and to finish up, where is going to be the impact on our mill rate for the next 10 years?
Thank you. So Mr. Rabs is uncommitted at this point on the bond issue.
Until we hear more from the council at the next meeting.
But as of tonight, you're uncommitted.
Correct.
Okay, everyone aware, be aware. All right, Ms. Downs.
Unfortunately, I have to say yes, because we are behind on our roads and streets. And it's unfortunate we got behind. We need to have it in place every year, like we used to do every year. But to get caught up, we need to do something, and I don't believe that the $3 million is going to do it. We're going to need more money, but we need to start somewhere. So, yes, we do.
All right, Kathy Downs is a yes on the road bond issue. Moving on to Nancy Minot.
I am a yes on the bond issue. I believe the roads do need attention, they have been neglected, and it is a beginning. Sometimes that's the best you can do at a moment, is to begin. I'm encouraged to hear there is a long-range planning group that are looking into the future, which would encompass all road work that would happen in the future. I would look forward to being a part of that if I were to be on the town council. There are other road issues that we could look at. There are complete streets that we have had some information about where, you know, we could imagine our community being accessible to all walkers, bikers, drivers. So I think that this is just a piece of a bigger picture.
Nancy Minot is a yes on the $3 million bond issue. Rachel Palaskis.
Hi. Okay, so I just had to replace my driver's wheel bearing. So obviously there is an issue with the roads, but I'm gonna have to say no, because you talk to the people, the actual people that do the roads, and I'm like, okay, so wait a minute. So why can't you could do the interstate and they last forever, but you do the roads and they're always falling apart. And they're like, yes, but it's the type of the material and it's job security. And it's like, well, we need to, you know, yes, it sucks that, you know, it's been going on this long and the roads haven't been repaired, but at the same time, you know, we just have to do it little by little. We can't, you know, take out bonds and stuff like that. It's not fair to the people. And again, the excise tax, you know, why wasn't that used for it, you know?
Thank you.
So no.
Thank you. So on the bond issue, Mr. Rankin is a no, Mr. Palaskis is a no, Mr. Rabs is uncommitted, Ms. Downs is a yes, Ms. Minot is a yes, and Mrs. Palaskis, I'm working on it, is a no. All right, moving along. I'm going now to the question of the swimming pool. Do you favor the bond issue? This is going to be on the ballot, correct? Of $1 million for the municipal swimming pool replacement project. Again, this is a 1-minute response. You'll get a 15-second warning with the pink paper. Mr. Morrison, you may begin.
Personally, I say no, but all of the people that I've talked to, for the most part, more people want to see the pool than don't want to see the pool. They have a tendency to say they need the pool. I feel that they want the pool. So I'm saying that yes, it might as well be voted for because the major amount of people want the pool.
Mr. Morrison is a yes. Okay, Mr. Carmichael.
I'm a yes. Excuse me, I'm a yes. As I said at my opening statement, I grew up in Bucksport, and don't want to wax nostalgia about my idyllic experience growing up here, but I would love to see that kind of experience for new families and new children growing up in the communities as our neighborhoods continue to turn over and more people come to town. A town pool, a beautiful setting like that is a place that will enhance and draw people to the community. Just another factor of why people may want to choose Bucksport to come to the community. That pool lasted, what, 55, 60 years, and people will say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We did, as a town, what we could do to keep that going, and now it's time to look into the future and do something that'll create a sustainable place for people to go.
Mr. Carmichael is a yes on the pool bond question. Mr. DeVonzo.
Even though I felt no, I have to say yes, because as I was driving around, stopping, talking with people, and asking them, just going over to their house, most of them feel that they don't like the idea, but they have to say yes because it's for the children. And if they feel it's a yes, then I go along with it. I don't understand how the concept of the $1 million comes in, since I don't see any report from an agency, a construction agency, and are you going to a place and saying, here, I have $1 million I want to spend? Or are you saying, how much is it going to cost to fix this item? If you're throwing out the $1 million as a starting point, I don't understand that. But if people want it, fine. I don't like it, and if personally myself, I would say no, but if I'm representing people and listening to their voices, so many more people are saying yes, so that's what I'm going for.
Mr. Devanzo is a yes on the pool bond question. Okay, moving along to the three-year candidates. Mr. Rankin, on the pool bond question.
I think the pool's a great thing for Bucksport to have to offer. It's especially businesses and people that wanting to move here, it's a great feature to have, to show that we have this, but I think we can definitely, right now, I say no. We need to get exact figures to see what full replacement cost would be, exact figures of repairing what's the structure that's already there. 'Cause to my understanding, it's just the piping and pumps and things like that. I could be wrong, not sure. In the $1 million, I think that's just a general number being set out there. I would want to see exact figures to give to the voters to say, this is the repair, this is new, it's your choice.
But as to
No,
the,
as of right now, no.
as to the question on the ballot, it does say $1 million.
No.
So you're a no.
Yeah.
Mr., let me see here. Mr. Rankin is a no on the pool bond question. The third candidate to go would be Mr. Rabs.
Right, thank you. I'm a yes. First off, to my understanding, the pool is going to be financed. It's not a bond issue. The financing, last I knew, was going to come from the rainy day fund, and that the pumping equipment was going to be reused. Here's the way you have to look at the pool. One way or the other, the pool is going to cost us money. You can't let it sit there. It's just going to become a safety hazard or a mosquito pond. So the existing pool is damaged. It has to come out. If we're going to take the pool out, we may as well rebuild it and put it back in for the enjoyment of the community. I'm definitely in favor of it. The last one lasted 50-plus years. $1 million over 50 years, I think that's a small price to pay. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, one last thing while I have 15 seconds. Again, I checked at the town hall this morning. This is going to be a binding vote on the financing of the pool.
Right, and I think you're correct, it's not a bond, but it is a financing.
Financing, yes.
But it is specifically a yes or a no on the ballot for $1 million.
That's correct.
Right,
And I'm a yes.
and you are a yes. All right, we now move to Kathy Downs.
You skipped Mr. Matthew here.
Did I?
Yeah. Number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, I really did, okay. My apologies.
Quite all right. Yes, I would be a yes on that. I think that as a town, you need to try to be as fiscally responsible as possible with the taxpayers' money. While roads may at times be, questionable, how much do we want to keep dumping into something we're going to fix every year? The town pool is something that we're going to get many, many years of use out of. And it is an important thing for the community to be able to go use and, get kids out there socializing in real life, as often as possible. I think that's worthwhile.
Thank you. Again, with apologies, Mr. Palaskis is a yes on the bond, on the $1 million. Now I think I'm in order to go to Kathy Downs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for telling me.
Oh, you're welcome. My answer is yes. This is for the children. I grew up here in Bucksport and spent many hours and days at the pool myself and the enjoyment. I would like to see some bidding and what it's going to cost. I just think $1 million is kind of not to spend more than $1 million, but I think it will come in under the $1 million. But it's a plus for the community, and it will draw people from outside, which it does already, from other communities, so it brings in.
Kathy Downs is a yes on the pool vote on the ballot. Moving now to Nancy Minot.
I'm a definite yes for the pool. I believe this is one of those areas that, one of those aspects of community that builds strong community. It also integrates the past, all the stories that I've heard of people that grew up going to that pool, and then also integrating the best possibility for the future in Bucksport also. I've heard of new ideas, yoga in the pool for adults, other kinds of classes. We have a very wonderful, I think, recreation department, Nick, that just has access and creates many wonderful programs. Lastly, I think meeting the needs of our population that do not have access to getting in a car and driving. Last summer, those children, many children were not able to have those learn to swim, those life skills and enjoyment and building friends because they did not have transportation to the lakes. I think it should be provided right here.
So Nancy Minot is a yes, and we go to Rachel Polaskis.
Okay, so my kids were lifeguards this year, so they worked at Craig's Pond, which with that, my son saved, a gentleman that, something happened and he couldn't get out of the water. So, but along with that, I teach the YMCA water aerobics class. So I think that there's, other options like, checking out the Silver Lake and the rules, and because if you're only going to use it for the summertime, there are lakes and the Silver Lake and the Craig's Pond and stuff like that that could be utilized. At the same time, it would be nice because the yoga, I get that, but my women, if it's not warm in the pool, they're not happy. So if it was like an indoor pool, I can see that. But at this time, with the price and not having the estimates of the pool and seeing how well, Nick and the YMCA worked this summer and giving the community, I think that the only thing that's the concern is the transportation. So as right now, I would say no.
Okay, Rachel Polaskis is a no on the pool question on the ballot. Okay. The question has come up regarding combining the fire chief, police chief as a director of public safety. What's your position on that, starting with Mr. Morrison?
I'm going to say that because our charter says now that there has to be a fire chief appointed, it's a separate position. I'm not sure that combining those into one director is a good idea. I think that we need to go with what we have. We have a fire chief. We have an excellent police chief. I don't think we need a director over those people.
Just to be clear, isn't it in lieu of individual officers, or am I missing something? Someone on the council can answer that.
It'd be in lieu of.
In lieu of, so it would be, to be clear, it would be a director of public safety who would be responsible, and you would be replacing the office of fire chief and police chief. You want to keep your answer the same, or you want to change it?
Yeah, I don't think that needs to be a combined position.
Okay, thank you.
Both positions have too much responsibility.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Carmichael. Your position on combining the position.
I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that we've had a full discussion about that, that whole concept. But my view is that if the town manager and her research and her analysis and all the work that goes into developing a plan for that comes to us and makes the case that this is the most efficient, most productive way to utilize those resources, I'm probably going to support it, because I think our role as counselors is not to micromanage what the town manager is doing. We hire a town manager. That's our charter, that's our job. We need to have some oversight, we need to ask the right questions, do some critical thinking, but I'll wait to hear the case, but we have a tremendous police and fire department right now, and if that's the way the town manager think we should go, I'll support that.
Okay, thank you. And moving on now to Mr. Devanzo.
As of right now, I would say no, I am against combining them, for the simple fact that I feel if they were combined and you did have a Department of Public Safety, you're still going to have a breakdown of an assistant doing the police work and an assistant doing the fire chief work. Now you're going to have 3 people instead of 2 people doing the job. So I really see quite a difference in being in the rules or regulations, the type of discipline, the type of oversight from being a police chief to a fire chief. And I think I would keep it separate.
Okay, so Mr. Morrison and Mr. Devanzo are a no. They'd like to see it kept separately. Mr. Carmichael is leaning toward waiting for some information from the town manager and rationale. Is that fair? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the 3-year candidates. Mr. Rankin, what's your position?
I would, if that was ever an issue, I would ever want to talk to Chief Gagan and members of the fire department and EMS, everybody involved, to see if it's feasible, but I know Hamden's had amazing success with it, and I'd be in full favor of it, yes.
So, just so the voters are clear, do you have a position tonight, essentially?
Yes, I think we could have one director of public safety.
Okay, Mr. Rankin is a yes on combining the position. Okay, moving on to Mr. Palaskis. I got you in the right order this time, sir.
All right. I honestly don't know much about what's being proposed. I mean, I certainly like the idea that we could potentially streamline things, save money. That's great. My biggest concern would probably be more to do with kind of code and regulations. You know, I mean, will this one person be able to fully comprehend all of the legal system that they need to understand, and also proper fire code, fire safety, the things that, you know, a fire chief is going to need to be responsible for going out and investigating a fire or something like that. So I'm not sure if one person necessarily is going to be, if you should expect them to have that wealth of knowledge of 2 completely separate fields. So I would say in this case, no.
Okay, Mr. Palaskis is a no on combining the 2 positions into one. Moving on, Mr. Rabs.
My position is, once again, neither for or against. And the reason I take that position, I'm a member of the fire department. Anything that comes along, if I'm elected to council, would require that I abstain from any vote because being a fire department member, so I'm neither for nor against.
So you're recusing yourself tonight?
Yes, please.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Kathy Downs, your position.
Well, again, I've heard rumblings of this happening, but I don't know much about it. I have not heard enough about the information to make a good decision. Again, I think that that's a town manager's position she's the one that's involved in this. So I can't make that decision myself. I don't think that would be fair of me to say it when I don't know enough about this.
So you would be somewhere where Mr. Carmichael is in terms of waiting to see what the town manager brings forth as rationale. Is everyone clear on that? She's not taking a position on that tonight. Everyone hear me? Great. We move along now to Nancy Minot.
I also am not in a position to take a position at this time. I don't have enough knowledge of that. I don't know where the process is. I do trust, trust in the town manager to explore all that and research all that and what have other communities done, and to bring forth a recommendation to the town council for consideration.
Thank you. So you are waiting for more information from the town manager. All right, and then moving to Rachel Palaskis.
I would say no, because the fire department and the police department have two different jobs. And so I think that they should be separated.
Okay, Mrs. Palaskis is a no on combining the positions. Thank you, candidates. Now, I'm not quite sure the source of this question. I don't mean who gave it to me, but the question is, and maybe someone on council could answer me, currently on council, something about signing a non-disclosure form. Is that something that happens in council? The question I've been given is, would you pledge to never sign a non-disclosure agreement? Is that something that happens at council?
No.
No, okay. I'm going to move on. There's a question, and I heard this after the last forum a year ago. The feedback I got was, I wish that the candidates had talked about senior citizens. So I'm going to pose this question that has been given to me tonight because of that experience I had a year ago. Do you think that the town of Bucksport can do more in providing additional services for its growing older population? Specifically, one of the things that I've been asked about is there some other housing possibility, not for people who need low-income housing or income-contingent housing, but what's your position on providing for seniors, and any thought about senior housing that would not necessarily be income contingent? Mr. Morrison.
I guess you're gonna have to ask me that again.
Okay, can Bucksport do more, and what would it look like for its senior citizens, including housing that doesn't depend on income?
Yes, I think they could do more. There's always room for doing more for the senior citizens, given the fact that we are an aging population. Yeah, anything that's possible for the senior citizens, regardless of their income, yes, I think yes, they could.
Okay, so could you give us an example for that comes to your mind of a need for senior citizens that's not being met at the moment?
Well, I'm a senior citizen. I think I'll abstain from that question. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Going to Mr. Carmichael.
I think one of the things that this may be out of a part of Rich's role as the Economic Development Director, but working as much as possible along with the other things that we do to attract businesses, and maybe to attract developers, as much as we possibly can do to attract developers who want to invest in senior housing and more opportunities for senior housing in town. I'm not sure it's the town's role to build housing, but to encourage developers to come in and help in that aspect. We're already working with a great group of people who look at accessibility issues. I did a walking tour along with other counselors and citizens a couple of years ago, and it was a real eye-opener about the problems with accessibility for seniors. And I think we need to continue that effort, and also use the YMCA as much as possible to promote senior programs in health and fitness.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Devanzo. Things that we could be doing for our senior citizens.
Well, today I was at a conference for the Maine Senior College Program. You're talking to someone, I worked for Catholic Charities for the Elderly, and I think the elderly are the most neglected people in America, period. I think the taxes they are expected to pay when they live on a meager Social Security, many people up here, I get being a federal employee, I get $350 Social Security. I get my federal pension, but that's my Social Security after 15 years. There's a house on Bagley that I think the mill owns. It's just sitting there going into disrepair. It was one of their office buildings. That could be, at least by the town council, maybe explored, maybe that could be made into housing for seniors, apartments. There are things that can be explored, which I don't think the council is doing.
Thank you. Moving on, again, what can Bucksport do to meet more of the needs of senior citizens? And if you can identify one or two, it would be helpful. I'll begin with you, Mr. Rankin.
As far as the housing, I'd have to agree with Mr. Carmichael that we could definitely work with investors and builders who that's what they do for a living. I mean, that's going to be their business. Bottom line is always going to be profitability of these people to be able to willing to do it, especially if you had nice condo situations or something along those lines. I don't think you want the town itself. I wouldn't want the town doing this as a business. I think any government-run business is probably not a good idea. I don't know fully everything we offer for seniors. I'm sure there's always going to be opportunity to do things better for them, to make their life easier, because they've earned it and they deserve it.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to Mr. Palaskis.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the most part, we kind of second what others have said. It's not our job necessarily to provide services, but to merely be facilitators. Make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep costs, fees, regulations as, keep them as light as possible, so that if a developer does want to come in and, potentially build apartments, condos, things like that, we're not combative towards that. We do what we can to make sure that we are able to make it happen, because I think that's in the best interest of seniors, or everyone really living in the town.
Anything else that you can think of? I hear what you're saying about the housing issue, but did you have any thoughts is there anything else that immediately comes to mind in terms of what we could be doing for seniors?
Well, I mean, I know that there are various organizations throughout the county and towns that provide different transportation. That's one of those things that it's not necessarily the town's job to provide, but I do think it's something that perhaps should be looked at. How do we make sure that we can provide adequate transportation for people as they need it? We have lots of people who, whether elderly or disabled, that have places they need to get to, and sometimes family members can't be available all the time to do that. So making sure that they have good access to that, I think, is important.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs.
Yes, sir. A few things, carrying on with Mr. Carmichael said over here, but when I was on council before, for a year plus, I was committee member for the Bucksport Bay Healthy Community. Over there, they're doing work with seniors and have about 11 different organizations that they can help redirect seniors to for different services. I know that the health center over here, under the direction of Carol Carew, has caseworkers assigned to different people throughout town. Transportation is something that the council sees reports on every month, both from a bus service that gets around town, takes people to Bangor, and also a taxi service for those that live out back that can come in. The Y is increasing their efforts working with the seniors. And then finally, over at the senior center itself, in terms of working with the RSU, they're providing meals over at the center and also Meals on Wheels. So I think we're off to a pretty decent start to keep going with.
Thank you, Mr. Rabs. Moving to Kathy Downs.
Adding on to Paul and Robbie, we also
Could
have,
you speak up, please?
adding on to what Mr. Carmichael and Mr. Rabs has said, we also have Senior Resource, and that's another organization that works with the seniors. And as far as the housing goes, I agree, it's nothing that the town should get involved with, but maybe our economic development could work with a construction company or something of that nature. But we do have, as Mr. Rabs said, the bus service in town, the taxi service. So we do have a few options for us seniors. But as far as housing, that is a problem and an issue, and I think that needs to be looked into. I agree.
Thank you. Nancy Minor.
I think we are. The fact is, we are an aging community. I think that there are a couple things. One of the issues as people age is isolation. So I think one thing a community can do is to break down some of that isolation. They're working on how they can transport more people to the senior center for those lunches. A great majority keep them in their home, just get their lunches in their home. There are other examples. There are art classes now at the Lighthouse for seniors to get out of their home, come together in just an open, free, it's a wonderful program for seniors. I think that a really good example of encouraging youth and seniors to come together were the benches that were, the idea came from the Senior Resource Center that they needed places to sit when they were waiting for the buses. RSU 25 said, okay, we'll talk to the high school. The high school carpentry classes built those benches. Art students painted them. Main Street helped locate them, and the town of Bucksport lugged them and put them up. So I think that the more of that kind of collaboration where we can collaborate with other groups.
Okay, Ms. Polaskis.
Okay, so I think that Bucksport has a lot going on, and they're doing an amazing job already. I think that with the housing aspect, I think it should be a blend. It should be older people living not in the same area as younger families and stuff, but at the same time, when I grew up, all I remember is always being near older people in the community, and my kids, that's all they know, because there was, the neighbor across the way that we would always go over and take them, because we're already cooking, so we go take them a dish of, to eat, or, we'd go over and watch the Red Sox game, with the neighbor or whatever. And it's community coming together. The organization is good to have all these, but I think that if the older people want it, they need to know about it, and the word needs to go out there, just like in the paper that it has it, but it has to come down to the individual and the families, helping the elderly.
Thank you. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege for a moment as moderator. Not everyone who's a voter in Bucksport goes to the council or goes to candidates. So I'm just, on their behalf, I'm going to say to you tonight, all of you who are running, seniors, and many of them are people that I interact with as a clergy member in this community, talk to me about their concerns, about their needs being met. There is a perception that seniors are not being served. So please take that seriously. I'm telling you in the most frank way that I possibly can tonight. I realize that there are things that are going on. But in terms of the housing, let me be perfectly clear. No one was suggesting to me when they talked to me that the town get into the building business. Right. But they were thinking about, what can the town do to help those of us who are making too much money to qualify for income reduced or income contingent housing, What kind of creative thoughts can you come up with for us? They're not looking to the town government to solve the problem. They're looking for you to be concerned about the problem and to articulate it and to think about it. And whether it's through the Economic Development Office or, council, perhaps there's a committee or subcommittee or an ad hoc group or whatever. But there is a need, and I'm telling you that tonight, and I have no horse in this race. I'm not a voter here. But these voters do talk to me, and they will be going to vote in November, and some of them are going to watch this on television. Some of them are here tonight. So please be aware, the seniors that have talked to me feel underserved. Maybe it's a lack of information, or whatever, but they would like to hear the council address senior concerns, at least keep it on the radar. Did I get that across to you? So please, I'm not behind the pulpit, but it's close. But take it seriously, because they don't all come to you, but believe me, when they need groceries, or they need a ride, or they are dealing with issues, they will find their way to my office and other clergy offices in this town. So I just want to pass that on to you as my thought for the evening, and now we'll go back to regular order. Okay, moving along. There's a question that's of interest regarding the town office. There is, I think, a question, I don't know how this will be resolved, but the question that has come is regarding the town office moving to a 4-day work week. Is that a real question at this point? Is that something that has not yet been resolved?
I believe it's on the agenda for a Thursday night.
It's on the agenda. Okay, I'll give it a quick shot. We don't need to take a lot of time with this one, but, do you favor going, my understanding is it would be what, a 10-hour day, 4 days a week, is that correct?
There was a survey put out asking the citizens this.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm going to just go through the list. Do you favor yes or no? Okay, and let's just take it from there. Mr. Morrison?
Yes, based on a conversation I had with one of the people who works in the office, that they feel that it is something they can handle, and it will give some of the citizens another chance to get in there at a later hour or earlier hour in the morning. So yes, I agree with it.
And is it correct it would be open Monday through Thursday and closed on Friday? Am I correct on that?
I would say yes.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving. Well, I'm not holding you to the feet to the fire, but I'm just saying that's kind of the concept. Okay, moving along. Mr. Carmichael, yes or no on that?
My answer is yes at this point, but I look forward to the deliberations on Thursday and more discussion around it, but I'm a yes right now.
Yeah, it's the concept I'm after. I'm not going to, quote you tomorrow in my sermon. All right. Moving along, Mr. DeVonzo.
With the information I have right now, I would say no, without knowing exactly the total hours, the amount of people can actually get to there. Even if my wife works in Ellsworth, it still is not going to help her when she's working early to get there early. Sometimes that extra is part-time job. Sometimes that extra day is really what certain people need. So, am I for it? Me personally, it doesn't bother me at all. What the constituents feel, if they can, if you want to talk about elderly people getting there, I don't know. I need more information, as I've heard so many people here say, whether give a yes or no. As a town, right now, with the amount of information given to me, I don't know.
Okay, we'll take it. Moving along to three-year candidates, three-year term candidates, Mr. Rankin?
I'd be in favor for it if there was a consensus that the town office could handle it. I mean, they don't need to have all this new pressure put on them if they can't handle it. If they can, I'd be in favor of it. It'd give you that a little extra time after 5 o'clock or so that you could sneak in there. So yes.
Thank you, Mr. Palaskis.
Yes, I'd support it.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs?
I don't support it at this time, subject to change, but right now I'm going to say no. I think, number one, it sends the wrong message. The town has really been upbeat and moving along, and it just, to me, it's pulling something back. I'm, at this time, not in favor of it, and I also believe that, I think we have enough numbers that we could look at Town Hall to understand what's the busiest days of the week and make adjustments accordingly. Find out, maybe, I've heard in the past that, we're looking at getting rid of Friday, and Friday's one of the busiest days at the office for people coming in to take care of their business, exchange monies, pay taxes, whatever it has to be. So I'd say, let's take a look technically at the numbers
Right.
and then make a decision.
But essentially, as of right now, you're a no.
Right now, I'm a no.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs is a no for now. Miss Kathy Downs?
This may not be a fair question for me, because I worked at the office for 26 and a half years, and I just retired. Fridays is one of the busiest days. And on the questionnaire, the opening was at 7:30 and closing at 5:30. I do not believe you're still going to get those customers that don't get out of work until 5 or have to be to work at 8. You're still not going to be able to serve them. I just think it's not a fair question for me to answer, but working in the office, this is how I see it. I believe that if you stayed open on a Thursday night, work the same schedule that they work now, stay open on a Thursday night while council meetings was in session until 7, you only need 2 people, and those 2 people could take the time off. You still don't have to pay overtime. It's a thought.
Okay, thank you. So would you characterize that as,
I would say no.
you would say no? I think your input is important because you worked there, and you're not working there now, so
No.
it's not going to impact you, yay or nay. That's my thought.
I have
Thank
lots
you.
of thoughts on it, but for 1 minute, that's in a nutshell.
All right. Again, in fairness, nobody said it was absolutely going to be Friday, but, that was my inference. Nancy?
I said yes on the survey. After talking with the people that were presently working in the town office, they were all in support of that. But I would defer to what the results of that survey is. So I think that was an appropriate way to put that out to the community. They're the ones that are using the town hall. When are they doing their businesses? And if it came back that, the majority of people said, no, we need that 5-day week, Friday, or then I would defer to the community. I think that's a good
Right.
example of community making the decision.
Thank you. Mrs. Palaskis?
Yes,
You're a yes.
yes.
For the record, living on Verona Island, for those of you that don't know it, stay open a little later on Thursday. So, not that influences what you need to do here, but I found it helpful. Okay, that takes care of that. I have a question here that was, let's go with this now. The question is, why do you want to be elected to this office? Mr. Morrison?
Quite frankly, to serve the people.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Carmichael?
Well, again, to serve the people, but to be part of something really great that's happening in town right now. There are a lot of things that we can do to set ourselves up and the people that live here for the next 20, 30 years with decisions that we make on the council. And we have that opportunity in front of us to create a new look for the town of Bucksport and its citizens. So I look forward to being part of that. And as I said earlier, keeping the momentum going. We have, as a council, we have a task of setting a vision and creating what we want to look like, from energy efficiency to the service and the jobs that come into the town, I want to be part of that.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. DeVonzo.
Well, the greatest joys I've ever gotten out of my life was doing volunteer work, and I've done that most of my life, and I would like to continue that here. I like listening to people, listening to what they want, what their concerns are, and to following that, and to making it a fruition. I believe the future for many people in Bucksport is now, many of the elderly people. To talk about the future in 20 years makes no difference. They did their 20 years already, to bring the town where it is. To move on and leave them behind, it's kind of a weird feeling to me. So why do I want to do it? I want to hear from every single person here who lives in the town and do what I can do to make everybody live a fruitful life. It's too many people come into this town and speculate, and when they've made their money, they pick up and leave behind debt for the people who live here. I want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, why do you want to be elected to a 3-year term?
I want to be involved with the current councilors and whoever gets elected here and just work towards making this town capable of what it can achieve. And I want to work, like I said earlier, with making this a town that my kids can work at and can live in and make some decent money, not have to move out of state to do that. And I'd like to work with the school board, because obviously I think the school is kind of your backbone of a small community. You've got to thrive around that. And I just want to be involved and help the best I can.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Palauskas.
Yeah, I would like to serve my community as well. You know, when I joined the Air Force, it was the same belief structure. It wasn't to get anything out of it. It was just to do something that was right. I believe that it's important to bring as much background as possible to a town council, and so the more diverse our viewpoints and our experiences, the better we'll be at making decisions collectively. So I'd like to bring my various background with me and hopefully be able to make some good decisions.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Mr. Rabs.
Yep, I'm looking to serve the people with the focus on 3 priorities. Number 1, to maintain and expand the current service levels that we have, to lower or maintain the current mill rate, and number 3, to continue with what I call smart growth, which we've accomplished over the last years. Council members' mission should be to solicit residents' comments while supporting the town manager's efforts towards development of public policy and strategies that will result in a balanced and sustainable economic growth, increased job opportunities. I think it falls under basic economics, and improve and diversify the tax base for the town of Bucksport. As a past council member, I dedicated a lot of time and energy, came to my meetings prepared, including writing reports, presenting them to the town manager and council members, and seeking their feedback and looking for positive ways to move forward in an affordable and an effective way.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Kathy Downs, please.
Well, as I've said previous, I was the town clerk, so I would like to continue to serve the citizens of Bucksport. I love my community. I want to see it to move forward, but also in a reasonable way that it doesn't affect the taxpayers. We are becoming an older community, so I want to be careful on how we do spend the money, but to also continue to move forward with economic development and the infrastructure. I would like to see a lot of work done on that also throughout the community. So I would like to be a council member to help in any way I can.
Thank you. Nancy Minor.
I think these are exciting times in Bucksport. Being a part of the Heart and Soul Project after the mill closed, I had this opportunity to hear so many stories from so many people. Their energy was evident to me. It tapped into my energy. I'm excited about the new challenge. There are a lot of things I don't know. All these particular issues, there's lots to delve into, and I like that kind of thinking. I like that. I like dialogue. I feel I can bring a different voice to the town council. I think we need a variety, diversity of voices. I might suggest that rather than economic development driving community development, I would suggest that community development drives economic development. And I think that that kind of dialogue is exciting, how they're all interwoven and integrated, and I'd like to be that community, building community as we look at the decisions we make in the future.
Thank you. Mrs. Palaskis.
I wanted to be a part of the town council to help with the community, getting their voice heard and the change that they want. A lot of times my kids have been growing up, now they're 16 and 18, and so now I have the time that I could focus and help make a difference in the town and all the great things that they have done and they will do in the future.
Just as a question of interest to the current council, is there a time in your agenda when citizen comments are open?
Yes.
A designated time?
Yes.
I'm hearing a lot of, I want to represent people, but people can actually go and speak for themselves at some point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you did, but I wanted to just kind of check that out. All right. In terms of economic development, is there anything that the town can do, town council can do, to encourage more commercial retail development on the eastern end of Main Street, from Mechanic Street to the Tank Farm? Mr. Morrison.
I would say first and foremost would be to support the Economic Development Director and what he tries to get accomplished, and to let him do his job, not try to micromanage, as it's called, and stick with that. I think it's up to him to get these things together, and if the council is approving what he does, then he's going to do his job.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Carmichael. Is there anything the council can do to encourage commercial development in that section of Main Street?
I totally agree with what Mr. Morrison just said. We need to make sure that the barriers are removed. Any barriers that all exist that don't allow our economic development director to use all the resources and tools available to him to create opportunities for businesses to come. We need to create codes and have a code enforcement team that looks at things and promotes businesses, doesn't block businesses, makes it easy for businesses to come in to these locations, and then market the heck out of our town. We need to do a much better job from a strategic level. Not that the economic development director isn't doing; he's doing a great job. But as a strategic goal, we need to do a much better job marketing.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs. Excuse me, Mr. DeBonzo.
Just a question, you said from Mechanic Street?
From Mechanic Street, specifically from Mechanic Street to the Tank Farm, anything that you think the council can do, with all due respect to the economic director and everything, but is there any ideas that strike you?
Well, first of all, there's an awful lot of private houses on that stretch, so that's what had me sort of confused. Then on the other side of the street, of Main Street, is the walkway and the waterway. So we're talking about blocking that whole view. Yes, to make it easy, that the economic development and sending out more news about Bucksport. I don't know if you can. It's everywhere in all the papers. Yes, retail shops small town. If you want to compete with Camden and Belfast, you can, but you have a long way to go. You have to have people who spend a lot more money. Should they look to develop more? Yes. But let's be realistic. You do have a lot of private houses, and you have that wide expanse of looking over the whole bay. You have to take something away there. So I'm kind of confused of the question.
Okay, I didn't write this question.
I know, I'm not
So
saying,
I can't,
I'm trying to envision of, you're gonna buy people's houses, I'm trying to figure out.
yeah, I guess possibly there are some places that are unoccupied
Right.
and whatever. I think it's, yeah. All right, moving along to the three-year candidates. Mr. Rankin, any thoughts on that?
I don't really know how you'd promote it more as a council, but the thing, I mean, Mr. Rotella does a great job, and I think you need to aid him in any way he needs, and if he ever needed something that he had in mind in particular for that end of town, I think it would be the council's duty to help him as best you could. I don't have a direct answer to that question of,
Right.
I think we could do this there.
Okay.
Rich does a great job, and we need to, it's all on you, Rich.
Okay. A lot of high marks coming out here tonight. Just, okay, I get it, he's great, but I'm just looking for, you guys have any ideas too, all right? All right, moving along, Mr. Palaskis.
One thing I think the town could try to work hard with the neighboring towns over in Orrington, Brewer, Bangor, and probably Department of Transportation, try to make sure that there's sufficient signs, getting people that are tourists to know that, you know, there's more than one way to down East Main. You don't have to go 1A, you don't have to take one and then just take right at the bridge. You know, get people to come down the river road, point out all the things that are this direction, and, you know, and then once you start having things like Whole Oceans there and people hitting that end of town first, they might suddenly realize that, you know, there's a town here, and there's going to be need for potentially businesses, services on that side of the town. I think at that point it just sort of naturally builds momentum.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs.
If I had a crystal ball where we would be 5 years from now, first thing, I think Whole Oceans will build an ed center down here as part of their multi-million-dollar investment. I would see some sort of a distribution center for Whole Oceans coming on board. Maine Maritime, Dr. Brennan came in and said that in 5 years he expects to have about 2,500 students going over here through the training center. If that's going to ramp up to 2,500 students, I predict there'll be a hotel, a restaurant. And then finally, the third thing that comes to mind is over here is a transloading facility that Bucksport will become part of the state of Maine port system, including Bar Harbor, Portland, Calais, Eastport. Those are my three.
Thank you. Kathy Downs.
Well, I think I agree with some signage. I agree with some marketing. And I also agree that our economic development director, he's doing a great job, and that we should not micromanage by any way, and that it's up to him. With the marketing, I think would help. And again, with Whole Oceans coming in, Maine Maritime Academy coming in, I think that's going to open up some spots for people to look at, to bring in some business. So I think that they will be contacting our economic development director in hopes to bring in some of the businesses, and he will be able to find spots for them.
Thank you. Nancy Minot.
I'm not sure where that particular parcel of land is, and I haven't given that thought, what should happen. I guess, you know, I'm guessing that Rich, economic developer, bases his outreach, his marketing on what is it that the town needs. So as those needs change with the development that's happening, as new businesses come into town, what is it that the town needs, that's where the marketing then is directed.
Thank you. Mrs. Palaskis.
I think that the traffic is gonna be, something to look at, whether you have like a bus system or whatever, especially when you're gonna have, 2,500 people, extra people. I mean, the Bay Festival as is like very congested down, during that weekend. Also, with the drivers, I would put something in the road so that the pedestrians can cross and not have to worry about that. The area between the antique place is a vacant area or a parking lot. The roach coaches would probably be a good thing for the locals to give more food options as well.
Thank you. I want to do one more question. I would like to keep it a quick yes or no without expounding on it because this came from the audience and I want to honor the question. So the answer will either be yes, no, or not sure. Okay? We'll go to the two-year candidates first. The question is, do you support a solar energy development on the old landfill at the transfer station? Mr. Morrison.
No.
Mr. Carmichael.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Devanzo.
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
No.
Mr. Palaskis.
Yes.
Mr. Rabs.
Yes.
Ms. Downs.
Yes.
Ms. Minot.
Absolutely.
Minot,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, and Mrs. Palaskis.
No.
Okay, that went well. I'm going to ask you one other quick one that came in. This is yes, no, I'm not sure, okay? Are the town public access cable channels adequately serving the town's needs? Mr. Morrison.
No.
Mr. Carmichael.
I can't answer that without more information. I know people with direct TV.
So not sure.
Not sure.
Okay, Mr. Devanzo.
No.
Okay, Mr. Rankin.
Not sure.
Mr. Palaskis.
No.
Mr. Rabs.
Not sure.
Thank you. Ms. Downs.
No.
Ms. Minot.
Not sure.
Okay, and Mrs. Palaskis.
No.
Boy, you guys are doing great here.
We're a great bunch of people.
Well, I'm public access too. I'm not responsible, I'm just asking the questions here. Okay, we have 9 candidates and a very limited time left. We're going to have closing statements at this time. I want to thank all of you for your candid answers, and I hope that it's been helpful to the audience tonight. We're going to allow 1 minute, please, on your closing statement. We'll begin now with Mr. Morrison.
Thank you again all for coming here today. This is the worst position to be in, the first one speaking, but I'll do the best I can. I hope that in November, I see the answer to me getting on the council. I'd love to get on there. I have nothing but the best interest of the town in mind, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael.
Well, thank you for hosting this and for everybody coming, and thank you to all the people running. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of passion to run for a position. Not everybody likes to put themselves out for criticism or applause, but thank you all for stepping up as well. As I've mentioned many times, we have a lot going on. We have a great town manager, we have a great economic director, we have a tremendous town workforce, we have outstanding fire, public safety. We have a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be proud of in this town. And people that I talk to out of town applaud us, applaud Bucksport for what we're doing and how we've gotten through some difficult times. We have some challenges. We have roads, as we talked about. We need to continue to expand and promote the waterfront. we need energy efficiency, we need to look at all those areas that we can create economic as well as environmental improvements by using solar, wind, anything else that we can do to put this town on the map.
Thank you. That's time.
Thank you.
All right. Moving to three-year term candidates, beginning with
No,
Mr.
no,
Rankin. Oh, sorry. Oop. All right, that's what's, never look at the
I'm the
clock.
oldest one here, and you're forgetting me.
Needs of people.
My apologies.
That's okay.
Mr. Devanzo.
First of all, again, like everybody else, thank you for showing up, and thank everybody else for running, and I agree, it takes an awful lot of courage. It's easy to say, the heck, well, I don't want to do this. I would feel bad if I didn't step forward, and I'm sure everybody else here felt the same way. I like serving people, I like serving the community, I've liked my work in serving people throughout my whole life. Whether the town gets larger or smaller is really not that much my concern. My concern is dealing with the people who live here now, what their needs are and what their hopes are. Yes, I want the town to grow, but I don't want the town to grow at the expense of the people who live here and expense of the people who have spent their whole lives living here and make it grow. The worst thing that's going to happen to you if you elect me is I'm going to come knock on your door, because I intend to knock on your door and talk over matters with you on a personal level. I thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now moving to three-year term candidates, Mr. Rankin.
I kind of have a vested interest in helping this town. I'm running a business with my father in town, 5 kids in the school system. I want to see Bucksport do great. I want to see it desirable to businesses as well as families to move here. It was sad to see the mill go. I grew up with both parents in the mill, but I think it gives Bucksport a chance to reinvent itself, and it already is starting, and I want to see that continue and flourish. A big thing we talked about, economic development. I want us to work with Mr. Rotella so he can have everything he needs to work with all these businesses to get them here, to market ourselves. And I'm getting the red flag, so I just want to serve the people, and my father and I talk to thousands of people every year at the business. We get their input. I want to see them taken care of. I want my kids to be taken care of. And I'd appreciate your vote in November. Thank you for having me here tonight, but regardless, get out and vote this November.
Thank you. Moving to Mr. Palauskas.
Thank you. Yeah, I really believe that this position and this entire body has a responsibility to maintain a level of efficiency, to make sure that we are really doing everything we can in the best interest of the town, the people, facilitate every best deal we can for the town. Try to think of everything from a long-term perspective, not just quick fixes, but how is this really going to impact us going forward? Is it going to be positive? And if it is, then we do what we can to make it happen. And, like I said before, it's already a great town. All we can do is try to make it better, And thank you for your time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Rabs.
Yep, thank you. There's been quite an upswing here in the community of Bucksport. Many of these endeavors simply got started because the townspeople saw a need and worked together. It's important the whole community maintain a positive approach and continue to champion that vision. I'd like to extend my most sincere thanks to all of you who have supported me in the past. My priorities remain the same, dedicating time, effort, and energy to serve the people, finding positive ways to move forward in an affordable and effective way, while still providing services that are valued by our residents. I'm very excited about the potential that exists here in the town of Bucksport. I firmly believe we can and we will continue to be the model that other municipalities look to become. And our town manager's phone will continue to ring off the hook, asking how we got that done. I would welcome the opportunity to come back to the Bucksport Council and continue to serve you. On November 5th, please consider casting your vote for me. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Downs?
First of all, thank you everyone for coming. If I'm so lucky to be elected for the council, I will always be available to every citizen in town. I'm a good listener, I'm a problem solver, I'm a good person, I'm trustworthy, honest, dependable, I'm a hard worker, I'm a caring person, and I will always look out for the best interest of the community and the citizens that live here. I have an interest in the economic growth and moving the town forward in a positive way, the infrastructure, and I will work very hard for the citizens and to keep your tax dollars down. And I would appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Minor.
Thank you once again. I'd like to close with another story. I experienced the feeling of belonging and the strength of the connections created in a strong community when I went to Banner City to get some campaign signs made. I checked in with the owner, Kim, one day and said I'd be back the next day with some ideas for the design of the signs and order some. When I went back the next day, Kim said, "Do you pronounce your name Minot or Minot?" And I replied, Minot. He said, "Well, when I was home last night, I thought, how about creating the slogan, why not Minot?" Since I don't have a well-known name about town, he thought the slogan would click when people entered the voting booth. Oh, there is Minot. Why not? I had chosen some colors, and he could tell me another candidate had already chosen those colors. I had chosen a design, and he could tell me that another candidate had already chosen that design. And then with such fun and humor, we worked together to create the yard signs and banners. A strong community creates a strong economy. So why not? Minot for town council.
Under the wire. Okay. All right, moving along. You're doing great, folks. You're doing great. Mrs. Palauskas.
Hi. Okay, so I decided to run for town council because all growing up, I grew up in churches as well in Southern Baptist. So we always took care of the community, whether it was, helping. My dad drove the bus to get all the people that couldn't get to church to get them to church. Also, all growing up, I always took care of our neighbors if they were elderly or if my kids had a friend that needed something. I just wanted to do it to be a part of the community and make it better than, it's already good. I just wanted to be a part of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now, the polls are open when and at what time? 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 5th. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct. Everybody's got that. We want to thank the Cable Access, who we've critiqued tonight for carrying this program. We want to thank RSU and the Bucksport Enterprise for co-sponsoring this annual event. Thank you very much, Don. Thank you to the candidates, all of you, for expressing yourselves to give us clarity on where you stand on a myriad of issues. And so we're grateful for this opportunity. Thank you to the audience. You've been very kind, and no one threw spitballs. So I think a round of applause for those who have stepped forward. We wish you luck. And with that, we bid you good evening. Thank you for coming.
Good job.